China remains an object of fascination and some concern in India. Fascination because of its economic muscle and concern because of its military muscle. I have with me General B.K. Sharma. He is with the United Service Institution of India. Sir, you were recently in Tibet. You went there for some time. What are your impressions of what you saw and the people you met?
Thank you. Yes, I had a very fascinating visit to Tibet, and Tibet is actually plays very prominently in the strategic radar of China for some very important strategic reasons. Firstly, Tibet is the water tower of Asia, and China being an upper riparian state, it has the leverage of water vis-a-vis the lower riparian state. It is very rich in natural resources. Then third issue is that the vast tract of our border with China runs through Tibet, and then is the issue of the Buddhist population. Chinese have a twin approach to deal with Tibet. One is the massive development, and second is the social re-engineering. In terms of massive development, actually they have now modern flats in Lhasa. All the government buildings are state of the art, and they've been able to relocate most of the villages and the nomads who were living helter-skelter. They've all been grouped together and they made modern villages with all the facilities for them. When you come to Lhasa town, in Lhasa town there are two Lhasas. One is the primitive, the ancient Lhasa, and they preserved its that ancient flavor. And then there is a new Lhasa. And new Lhasa, it could be compared with any street in Paris. State of the art. You have discos, you have pubs, you have all these, branded stores and departmental stores and everything that you talk about a modern city. So these are the achievements which the Chinese have been able to do. But on the flip side, as far as the social re-engineering is concerned, I would say that Tibetan find a kind of a spiritual deficit, because 14 Dalai Lamas from 1 to 13, they actually had guided their day-to-day lives. They were the spiritual kind of compasses for them. And when you go to Potala Palace, you find the photographs of 13 Dalai Lamas. Their tombs are there, but the 14th Dalai Lama, the living Dalai Lama, is missing there, right?
Yeah.
So that is a kind of a thing, and there is an appeal for Dalai Lama, but people are little apprehensive about expressing. On the other hand, I could see in the taxis and the cars the photograph of Karmapa being displayed. Karmapa has never criticized China, whereas Dalai Lama has left no stone unturned to criticize China. So there are concerns. Another issue now is traditionally what the Buddhists used to do, they used to send their young children to seminaries where they will learn Buddhism and they would be able to sort of, imbibe those values, internalize the values of Buddhism. Now it's compulsory in China for a child to be educated for 18 years. That means 12 plus 6. Once he's done 12th standard, then he's given a choice if he wants to join a seminary and acquire knowledge of Buddhism. Now at that stage it's too late actually to indoctrinate a person, So that's another thing. Then the management of most of these shrines is actually they put the hands, who are part of the management, and the reason they said that there was a lot of corruption, the money used to be squandered and it used to be misused, and therefore we put our own checks and balances. They're giving them liberal dose of money, but the management is mixed, right? Now these are some of the things which Tibetan do not like, and on one hand they're very happy with the pace of development, because lifespan has gone up from 36 years, which was a couple of decades ago, to 70 years today.
Would you presume that the long-term Chinese aim on Tibet to assimilate, is the way in which they are progressing with regard to Taiwan also?
See, I have been to Taiwan thrice, in fact, and the Taiwan issue is very, very different, because Taiwanese have tasted the flavor of democracy. and they will never forego democracy.
So, since you've mentioned this, the military tensions that are there between China and Taiwan, let's just step back a bit and look overall at what is China's strategic approach, you know, in terms of its foreign policy, in terms of where it sees its interests, how it sees the US, how it sees India.
You see, China has a strategic vision, a grand strategic vision, and that is encapsulated in China Dream, right? If you look at China Dream, there are milestones of China Dream. 2021 coinciding with the Communist Party of China, 100 years,
100 years,
and they want it to be a moderate prosperity nation. Then is 2025. That means you want the technological empowerment of China, made in China, based on niche technology. Then is 2035, when you want to have a modern socialist state. And it's about that time they want to actually induce a gravitational pull to other Asian states to emulate the Chinese model. And then go to 2049, that is the rejuvenation mission, coinciding with 100 years of birth of new China, People's Republic of China, wherein they want to be number one economic power, they want to be a technological superpower, they want to be a modern military, and they want to be, look at the balance of power on favorable terms vis-a-vis United States of America. Now, what are the enablers of China Dream? One of the principal enabler of China Dream is Belt and Road Initiative, which has a strategic connotation, a strategic footprint, and that is 1 trillion investment in about 68 countries in multimodal projects, and that actually affects India in many ways, because if you look at the 3 important economic corridors, they are in India's neighborhood. You have the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which makes China de facto third party in Kashmir dispute. Then you have the China-Myanmar economic corridor from Kunming to Kaikfu into the Bay of Bengal, and now they're talking about China-Nepal economic corridor, right? These 3 corridors, continental corridors in India's strategic neighborhood. Look at the maritime Silk Route. The 2 continental outposts of maritime Silk Route, one is Kaikfu in Bay of Bengal, second is Gwadar in the Arabian Sea. And then all the countries of our littorals, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, they've roped them in and they become party to maritime Silk Route. So I say Indian Ocean region, I would say, would be the center of gravity of Belt and Road Initiative in many ways. And that has effects on, it will alter the politico-economic landscape, and it would have strategic dimension. And if China progresses the way it is, and we remain inert the way we are, right, the strategic balance in the Indian Ocean region will tilt in favor of China. With regard to United States, this thing is, they look at United States, the biggest stumbling block in China's rise, and particularly the security alliance system which they are trying to sort of put together, and they look at India also as part of that grand encirclement design. So one of the principal objective is to undermine the credibility of United States of America as a guarantor of international system, as also as a security guarantor to East Asian countries.
Given that now you have a pushback against Belt and Road, and also taking down the fact that there is also Trump's trade war against China, has this impacted on China's economy? Has it impacted on Xi Jinping?
See, there are already murmurs there. I had detailed discussions with some of my colleagues there who leading economists there. See what has happened now, nearly goods worth $200 billion, there is a 10% hike in tariffs. And Trump has said that if Chinese retaliate, I will increase this to 25% with effect from January 2019. As for economists and some of these Economist magazine and some of the Chinese economists, it's actually causing a dip about 0.5% in their GDP, and over a period of time it could actually result in a dip of about 1% of the GDP. Now 1% of the GDP amounts to loss of about 10 million jobs. So there are questions now being asked that because of economic sanctions and certain questions being raised about the prognosis of Belt and Road Initiative, is it time for us to go back to Deng's theory? That means don't claim international leadership and focus more on making China a more developed and better country.
So has it impacted on Xi Jinping? Is he under pressure?
See, there have been initial signs when he extended his, the term limit of the president. There were a lot of netizens who had objected to that. This is a betrayal by Xi Jinping and all. And if this Belt and Road Initiative doesn't show the results, then all fingers are going to point at Xi Jinping, because he is the architect of Belt and Road Initiative. So if he could take sort of the credit for its success, any hiccups or any impediment in its progress, that blame will also go to Xi Jinping.
But the military is on his side?
See, he's been able to restructure the entire military hierarchy there, and there is no doubt that people were not very happy with PLA because of the corruption, the patronage network. I've been to China a couple of times. Whenever I spoke to these military people, they were all only talking about flats and other things, and the quality of life and things like that. So corruption had become quite prevalent. He's been able to put a sort of a lid on that. He's been able to put a curb. To that extent, people are very happy. If there's one thing which goes to his credit, that is the way he's cracked down on corruption in the party and in the PLA. So as of now, I do not see any strong voices within the PLA who would object or who would resist actually to his leadership. In fact, I spoke to my colleagues there. I said, what was the logic of doing away with this term? They said there are resistance groups within China to his reformation policy and to Belt and Road Initiative. So he thought in his wisdom that continuity would be required for realization of these policies and reforms.
So Narendra Modi met Mr. Xi in Wuhan.
Yeah.
And do you think that has been a game changer in a sense in India-China ties?
You see, you have to look at the fundamentals of geopolitics. One odd meeting here and there
doesn't solve anything.
Doesn't alter the basic complexion of a relationship. But I would say that, well, both countries have realized that rather than pushing the envelope, they have to have a modus vivendi, wherein the two have learned to respect each other's core interest and align their positions without getting antagonistic. That's a welcome step, and we have to have an incremental approach, and we have to use this window, I would call it as window of strategic opportunity, to build up our own capacity to bridge the power asymmetry that we have vis-a-vis China.
Last question, sir, just coming back to Tibet. Does India stand on Tibet? Does it still worry the Chinese? What is the sense you got on your visit?
See, Chinese don't say it in so many terms. They are very, very subtle and they are very nuanced on this. And post Wuhan, the kind of signaling which India did, distancing themselves from the Tibetan diaspora here and the Tibetan celebrations here, that has pleased Chinese, that has pleased Chinese. But on the whole, they're not very certain. Well, because there are certain uncertainties even related to India's behavior.
Yeah.
If tomorrow there is one set of government and set of circumstances when you sort of keep the Tibetan issue and the diaspora under the wraps, tomorrow the circumstances could change and you could play up with this. So these factors are still very much alive in the Chinese mind, and to my way of looking at it, unless the Tibetan issue is resolved on Chinese terms and conditions, they would not be in a hurry to resolve border issue with India.
So it looks like there's a lot of waiting up ahead.
Yes, there is a lot of waiting, and problem is that we should not have an ostrich approach in dealing with Chinese. If tomorrow things are looking okay, we should work with additional vigor and vitality actually to to do the infrastructure development, reinvigorate our diplomacy, build up our deterrence capability, the credible deterrence capability. That doesn't mean you're itching for a war or a conflict with Chinese, but you must bring yourself to a level where you can speak to Chinese, if not from a parity, a near parity, right? And we should not lose that window due to our internal political squabbles and policy flip-flops.
Sharma, thank you very much. Really a pleasure.
Thank you.